Okay, this is a bit of a pilot or an experiment. I want to basically present a bit what I know about change management, technology management, project management, and the audience is basically recruiters or managers who have an interest in what I am working on. Often in recruitment interviews, I'm asked to talk about change management and technology and DevOps, and then often I talk too much. I note that, and people sort of cut me a little bit short, because it's a vast area, and so I thought I would do a presentation on these management frameworks and the things that come with it. It's only 4 slides, but the presentation is probably going to be like an hour or something. I hope you find it interesting. If not, then not, of course. In terms of management frameworks, let me first structure the presentation. Maybe I first going to talk about management frameworks, which is this slide. Then I'm going to zoom into DevOps. That's a paradigm that is there since I think a bit more than 5 years now. I think it's a very strong management paradigm. I'm gonna talk about ICT management in general. Probably do this first. You can have a process view on what needs to happen in your organization, or usually we're now all doing things in projects. I'm going to talk about that contradiction a little bit in terms of having a process management view versus a project management view on your organization and ICT. And here I'm going to talk about finance and then give you my final opinion on what I think really works in terms of motivating people. Management frameworks, I often say that when you talk about technology, there are a lot of standards out, and the mother of all standards, I would say, is the ISO 9000 family of quality management standards. You're working with sophisticated technology. There's cybersecurity threats. There's all kinds of stuff. You need to have a software production system that is up to the mark. And when you this is why also I had one employer where I said that should sort of in the long run an ISO certification, not all of them, but at least the basic ones, that should be where we should be getting. And I got sort of a blank stare, and it didn't go anywhere, which was kind of sad, because in my experience, an ISO certification is important. We live in a world where compliance and quality are very important. And then you talk about certification of your management and production processes, of your technology, and also certification of your people. You talk about the skills that you want to have in-house, or that you want to develop in-house, so you don't have to outsource. So certification is very important. I think in the field of ICT, the ISO 9000 family of standards got broken up a bit in the general ones, quality management systems, 9000, 9001, every 5 years they get an update. Quality management in general, what a quality officer or quality assurance officer in your organization needs to do, that's the 9004. And then you have these sector specific standards, which or sets of standards that interest us for the medical industry, petrochemical. What interests us, of course, for the ICT industry is the 9000 X standards for software engineering. These are basically an application the basic quality system standard to the production of computer software. So the whole set of 90,000. Coming with that, and then I'm going a little bit into the ITIL framework, of which you have surely heard. That's basically, in most organizations I talk to, or organizations that are interested in me, they will say, well, do you have experience with the information technology, information library management framework? And yes, I do. ITIL is a framework for basically two things are there. IT service management, all the processes that are linked to that. So ITIL provides, as a sort of a library or a model, a model for modeling your functions, your processes. You need to adapt it to your organization. You can go in very much detail. But basically, based on ITIL, you can sort of map the ideal world against the real world in your organization. The second, very important, often neglected, and a huge problem, IT asset management. Assets in the large sense of the word. It's not only sort of the computers that your employees use, but your data center, and especially all the software you have, the licenses, the IT, the whole architecture that you have, or architectures in most cases. You will have several stacks and several categories. You will have, your office automation environment, Google or Microsoft. You will have your data management systems, maybe in ERP. If you're a production company, or you're in an entertainment business, you're going to have very specific production systems. I worked for one in the video production sector. Or I'm playing at production sector, your production systems that are going to use very different operating systems to deal with programmable logic control, as it's called. So the IT service management, let's zoom in on that. The same thing, I think, if you start employing that model, you want to get better, and to get better, you need to set a target a bit higher than maybe where you're going to think you're going to end up. And that's again where these ISO standards are very important, that from the start you understand these, and that you think about certification according to the ISO 20000X. I think there are 6 that I'm around, IT service management, or the 27, very important now, the 27000X standards around information security, cyber security, and privacy protection. Again, an example, I worked for a smaller company which had a project for the European Commission. At some point in time, we were actually working on a platform, a learning platform, the EU Academy. And at some point in time, we realized we had to set up a help desk for it, and organize communities around it. And normally that was to be done by the European Commission itself. But so they weren't on time, and they asked us to do it. And basically, I could convince, or the European Commission was happy to be convinced, that based on the ISO, the general ISO 9000 standard we had for the organization, the fact that we our cybersecurity, that we ran on in an encrypted environment, that our data was on EU data centers, including the backup, based on these rather simple ISO certifications that we had, we were qualified as a legitimate data processor for the European Commission, which was a first for the company I worked with. So it's not rocket science, but yeah, if you know these standards, if you can talk about them, and then you can show something to your client, so they understand that you're okay, then you'll get more business, or you will be able to do the business that otherwise you would not be able to do. Like indeed data processing, according to the GDPR rules of the European Commission. A very interesting set of standards. It used to be the 15 XXX standards. It is around process assessment models around the systems development lifecycle. And you will say, how is that any different from these 9000? Well, there you're talking about an assessment of the maturity of your organization, for example. And I'm a believer in sort of the maturity model. If only because it's a concept that speaks. People have different levels of maturity. Management, there's different levels of maturity in how you manage a company. Management by terror, management by spreadsheet. These are the old-fashioned ways, but yeah, leading by example and all that's a more mature model of management. So at the level of an organization, you can think about these levels as well. I worked for an organization who was actually a little bit too obsessed about that. And what do I mean with that? They had done a self-assessment, and I noticed, the assessment was more, a management tool to convince everyone that, we're on the right way, we're moving ahead. There was a KPI framework, a balanced scorecard framework attached to it. And so from year to year, they were a bit under the pressure to improve on that framework. And that's where I think these maturity assessments are not being used for what they should be used. They should be used to think about where you are and yes, think about where you want to go, but not as some kind of internal or external marketing tool. By the way, the level of maturity for an organization, you will know that this is level 1, initial, 2, 3, 4, 5. Usually these are seen as the higher level, the better. I think in an organization, you can have various departments, business versus ICT departments, that are at various stages. So that's something you need to acknowledge, and that's also something which I found more useful than saying, "Oh, we are level 3." Is basically, maybe that business unit or that department is a bit behind in terms of how they communicate with us and how aware they are of what their capabilities are. So I find it a useful tool maybe to assess within your organization different levels of maturity. While you are doing that, again, I would not be too focused on, we need to be level 4. The focus, and this is something interesting in the older Carnegie Mellon model from, the Software Engineering Institute of Carnegie Mellon University, when they developed it. They associated these maturity levels with a certain focus, certain organizational focus. And level 1 was associated, maybe there is not much of a focus, but we have a lot of, and that's positive, a lot of competent people and a lot of what is referred to as heroics. Heroics, you can see that negatively or positively. I like to see it positively. Think of the atmosphere that you have in a startup. Where you really have highly motivated people who believe in the value of the service of the product that they are developing. Maybe it's not a standardized thing. So think of the atmosphere in a startup or in your organization, maybe a new business unit that you want to set up. When you do that kind of things, you'll have a smaller organization, and it is important to have a very much of a focus on individuals, on people who are extremely competent, maybe a bit crazy also, and sort of motivate them or make sure that they are motivated or will be motivated to go the extra mile, to develop this thing that you don't know very much about, and let them go and run with something. And so project level 2 is associated with project management. Okay, we have project management processes are in place. Again, level 2 will, as they read there, it's characterized for projects, and it will be reactive. What do they mean with that? Well, you have the Gantt chart. the project is a little bit of an island. Maybe there's not much control. So project management 101, not sort of project management as part of an integrated portfolio. So that would be level 2. I think most organizations, if they have to be honest, they combine, level 2 and level 1. Hopefully level 1 as well. They because that's something you see when an organization goes through change, or there's a brutal reorganization, or an organization grows. Well, it's often the competent people that you will see are leaving, and you're left behind with people who are just comfortable in their job. And that's also not what you want. So keeping the right mix of people, level 1 and level 2 people, I would say, but not in a negative way, is important. Level 3, the focus is going to be very much on standardization. Standardization is good. There's no doubt about that. But standardization aims at getting some kind of productivity tools in, making sure that your product of your service is delivered according to a certain quality standard, which I put next to it. A certain reliability in your outputs. Level 4, qualitatively managed, is indeed related with quantitative management, but we know the limitations of that. You have to get your target. Your KPIs need to improve. Your this or that. That's gonna keep people motivated to some extent. Their bonus is gonna go up, or they keep their job. But I wouldn't call it very mature in terms of you need to combine quantitative management with people management, leadership, development of your skills. In the KPIs, I put them somewhere. Your key performance indicators. They're not all. They're financial, of course. They're linked to the customer, your internal business processes, indeed. Standardization, but also learning and growth of people. Here I put that here. Hmm. And that tends to be forgotten, I think. So when you're sort of too much focused on quantitative management, and then level 5 is a continuous process improvement. We're good, we're there, everything is perfect. I would say that's a bit old-fashioned thinking. Your markets change, and that's where I believe, 30 years ago we were talking about, we had this discussion. It's a bit like waterfall versus agile. We also had a discussion of should we be doing business process re-engineering or business process engineering? With re-engineering being a more revolutionary approach, and engineering, focused on continuous improvement. So I'm here in my presentation now. I think you need to keep a healthy mix. There's areas and markets where indeed they're going to be very mature, and there you need to focus on sort of continuous process improvement. And I will talk about how you can do that. But yeah, in other markets, you need to apply a more. You need to do real change management. And when I talk about real change management, you're often going to have this kind of model where you do an assessment. Okay, where are we now? We have a SWOT analysis. We know how a SWOT analysis works. Strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threat. The difference is the internal environment. Variables that are related to our internal, the way we function, and then variables that are outside of our control, and the market, and so then you map within your organization your strengths and weaknesses against that. And then you map sort of what is good for you and not so good, and that are going to be your opportunities and threats. And based on that, you decide that both on the internal front as well. So you want to change the environment as well. We're going to sort of unfreeze the organization. And we're going to have a change management roadmap, and then we're going to measure the progress every year. Usually, this is a real roadmap that I made. I mean, a high-level one. 2014-18, over a number of years, we are where we should, where we want to be. We've defined that where we should be 1 to 3 years, and then we're going to refreeze. All right. So we envision the future. We do an assessment. We envision the future, and through doing the right things, acting, we get there. Let me clean up my notebook a little bit. I think that's something that I haven't seen working in practice. It is a very rational model. It can mobilize people. But we also know that, I mean, that's my experience, and I think future employers are not going to be happy that I say that. But I've seen sort of these, especially in the public sector, where you go through the motions, and every 4 or 5 years, you rewrite or you update your strategic plan. I always say like, or you have a rolling plan. You update it every year, and what do you really change? You copy and you do copy and paste from the last year or from the plan of 3 4 years. There's still the same processes that need to be improved, still the same, I don't know what, regulatory difficulties, and yeah, your organization has become a bit of a dinosaur, and this kind of stuff is going to be because people are smart. Your employees are smart. They're just going to dismiss it as well. Okay, that's the next manager, the next CEO, and he's just reinventing the wheel. And so that's where I'm now a lot more careful about these sort of business process reengineering, change management paradigms, and I believe a lot more actually in this here continuous improvement, but do it with very competent people. Sort of mix your level 1 and level 5 people, and make sure that they believe in the value they produce, the non-financial motivators. Okay, I've been rambling a bit, and I need to get on. I said this is sort of a bit of an experiment. I didn't want to do a death by PowerPoint presentation, so I'm using my notebook indeed. I'm going to talk about this in a moment. I just want to reiterate that point, what I said, when I've been oscillating between project management, technology, ICT, and then finance. I'm more into finance. A lot of the external consulting, the consulting I did for clients like, the European Commission, World Bank, IMF, USAID, DFID, UKAID was around budget support, so it's money. What are we going to get for the money? ICT management, I think, tends to forget that. Things are getting very complicated. But you need to focus on that. Here, however, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm gonna talk about, again, what I say. You can have a process view on how you manage and what you should manage versus a project-oriented view. This is sort of the ITIL service operation model. I've worked on that, incident management and problem management, right? And then request fulfillment. Somebody needs something, a new employee needs his computer, his smartphone needs to be set up, or a developer comes in, you need to furnish him with a special machine, or there's some other. Some of these things are not requests, but are really like, I have a problem. There's an incident, something, a system that breaks down. So then you have a lot of users that have a big problem. You have tools for that. I put them here now, ServiceNow or the For Me system. These are sort of the tools that your help desk is going to use for that. And I'm going to talk how you can use that in a DevOps, analyzing what's the type, your classification of incidents, and how you can sort of prevent them from happening in the future, and thereby reduce these things. But what I want to say here is that you look at facilities management. I said your office automation environment, the laptops that are around, but it's a lot more now. The printing, the badges, the access to buildings, all these kind of things. Your operations, making sure your data center runs, working towards a tier 2 or even a tier 1 model, the technical management. So you're going to have tools like, Enterprise Architect, which is an IT, for me, an IT asset management system. It's often not used like that. In one organization, it was really just a drawing tool. We're going to draw and document what we are going to build. I think Enterprise Architect can be used and should be used also as an asset management tool. Your monitoring systems, Chinga, Prometheus listeners on your computers, or in the cloud, Victoria Metrics, and then Grafana for dashboarding. Your virtualization management, VM. ASCII or other, your whole .NET stack, your Oracle. We Red Hat Linux and the whole stack on top of that. It's different tools. That's something I want to emphasize here. If you have sort of a process view, and I'm going to talk about DevOps, your operations department will often, have that kind of process view more than what I'm drawing here is. Building applications, right? Building modern and delivering modern applications. I did a course 6 months ago. Updated my certifications, but I don't have a certification this one on basically containers as a new, so this whole environment around Docker and Kubernetes Q8. With the monitoring Grafana used, Grafana and Prometheus, your deployment pipeline with Helm as I have never worked with that as a packaging manager, and then Argo for continuous deployment and integration. Wonderful frameworks, all with GitHub. Something you might not know is GitHub has been bought by Microsoft, so it's open source. But Microsoft has moved open source. I found that something else I learned: Go working really very well together with GitHub. What is nice about the Go is much more than a programming language. It's a whole ecosystem. Is that and I'm going to talk about it. In a moment, Shadow IT. It's Go actually, and GitHub, it's open source, but Go, when it downloads a package, it will check against the checksum database, so you're sure that you don't get corrupted software or things you don't want. But just to say, these come with very different tools. I said ecosystems, or I don't know how you should call them. Well, integrated development environments, basically. Like Visual Studio, GitHub, or SourceForge, or other things you have. And so these are the development environments that your programming teams are going to use together with the tools I mentioned. Maybe a package manager. Tools for release and deployment, and that's actually where I see the two things coming together, and where DevOps, I believe, is important. To make this work. Okay, we need to. That's real. That's the real change management. A change happens. Okay, we have code that we need to rewrite because the functionality of the system needs to change. We want to, we had a minimum viable product, for instance. Now we want to load extra features on it. So we need to change the code, or the data. Data model, we're going to pull in more data, or the configuration changes, right? Or the environment changes. We move to a different stack, or we have a new database. We're going to go from Oracle maybe to a .NET compatible database, MySQL or something. So that's where you want to, build it, test it, and deploy it, and then measure it. Testing is very important, often underestimated. I worked in an organization where unit testing was done, but the integration test, there was very little attention for that, and then things went wrong. Sometimes in a very stupid way. Implementing the container architecture, we found out that the first deployment sort of didn't set the clock on the system clock to Belgian time, which is +1 from GMT, and then the system started was no longer working with the agenda management system of people, and boom, and then we were not happy. We had to roll back. Roll back is always a time-consuming, costly, expensive process. You have to start from scratch, your systems development lifecycle, or it works and then we celebrate, of course, but we can't celebrate too long, because that's something. I've been like 30 years, a career of more than 30 years. It hasn't become any easier. That's sort of this course I used from this young IT guru, I would say, in the ecosystem of containers, Kubernetes, on Docker or combined with Oracle. Delivering software has and remains for some reason always challenging. In a way, it's become simpler. I worked on case computer-aided software engineering in the 80s. It didn't work at the time. Why not? Because when customizing the system, you had to go into the source code. So the case about it was not very much computer-aided. There was a lot of manual intervention, performance problems. But yeah, it remains challenging, and that's probably why. Why? Because the complexity has increased. We are now building, things that are uncomparable to, what we did 30 years ago. From experience, I could talk about, the computer architecture of a Commodore 64, programmed games. And now there's so much stuff that you need to take into account. Logic is distributed over clients and servers. The the, the web, okay, the browser war was won by Chromium code set out. Both Edge and Google Chrome run on Chromium now. That is good. But yes, the on the client side and server side, you'll have different web frameworks. Angular, Java server faces. So it's highly complex. The applications are distributed, and the technology stack is constantly changing. But that's why, yeah. Still, you wanna work, but you see, this is really a project view that you need to have, and then especially think about, what is the tooling we're going to use for that, and then this to achieve at that. We in the end we do want to see ICT costing the same or less, and not more and more and more. I would say when you manage complexity like that, keep in mind the Pareto rule. 20% of your efforts is probably 80% of your business value, or improving 20% of things that are not working great is probably, gonna end up reducing 80. I mean, I might reduce costs with 80%. Focus on the essential, the big wins, or the big cost drivers. Not the small ones. Also for projects, focus on the projects. If you have an issue, too many projects, maybe cut some things down, but focus on the 20% that are delivering, and then you're gonna get the best results. That's a bit rough to say, but it's a practical reality, I think. Okay, let me go to DevOps. DevOps has been around for more than 5 years now. It's usually defined as a methodology or an approach, but you will say, well, yet another methodology, right? I think I define it as a philosophy more than as a methodology, because it combines, it's a bit like blockchain. Blockchain, in a way, I did a course on that. Is sort of, okay, what is blockchain? It's not new, encryption and KPI architectures. PKI, public key infrastructures. They have evolved. The way we're doing authentication now. We have this killer application in Belgium. It's me. It's wonderful. Yeah, I can talk about security. Blockchain brings that all together, encryption, and as such, it's more of a philosophy, an approach, than just another methodology. We all know what DevOps is. It's supposed to bring software development and IT operations together. So it's often represented by the cycle. On the upside, we need to manage applications and our data centers. So there's going to be a release. Your change manager every week or every month, depending on how often you do deployment, is going to release something, and you deploy it and you operate it, and then you monitor it. Is the user happy? Maybe there's functional requirements that need to change, or maybe there are technical changes that need to happen. I said that technology stack is evolving. Maybe you want to use a bit of a different technology that allows you to go into development and build some extra, test it, and so you have that cycle going around and round and round. I think it's a lot more than that. Yeah, before I talk about what's more, the risk a little bit with DevOps, well, it's not a risk, you have that, you had that anyway, is again sort of the tooling around it. So we have a DevOps approach, and we have indeed sort of what I said, a lot of processes that are happening with ops, with development teams do not always understand very well, and development thinks in terms of project, so they have a project-based approach. And the big thing is when you start, I did at once an inventory of all the tools. We are using which tool supports which processes, and which tools are used in what type of project. We sort of, one of the things I did is a bit of a portfolio classification of projects. I will talk about it in a moment. There's different classifications. I prefer a very simple one. But yeah, you have on the operations will have monitoring systems, and Ansible. Was here chef, but I could mention these are release management tools, or we have the whole Docker stack. I mean, I could. Yeah, there will be a number that you Jenkins here. On the development side, yeah, Git, GitHub and GitLab, and so many things more. This is really, but you quickly arrive at dozens and dozens of tools, and these need to be managed as well. And this is something. Oh, I have another thing. Yeah, I want to talk a bit about one point is shadow IT. Your developers are going to be creative. But often ICT, oh, the business is they bought Monday.com. They don't believe in our Atlassian system, and they have now their own workflow management system. But they shadow IT in your ICT department as well. Yeah, this one I put here: continuous integration, continuous deployment. The organization I worked for wanted to do that as well. We had quarterly releases. I think that was not going too badly. Quarterly releases are more linked to a bit of a waterfall approach. You're going to plan for larger changes to a system and deploy them on a quarterly basis. I think it creates a healthy pressure on the team to be ready, because they only have once every 3 months an opportunity to really do a major upgrade. So everything has to be ready and tested. While if you do continuous deployment, it's just like, okay, we weren't ready this week, we'll do it next week. Or we weren't ready this month, well, we'll do it next month. There are dependencies that need to be managed and all that kind of stuff. So continuous deployment, weekly. It's not an easy thing, and I think as an ICT organization, you should be careful and think, about the costs and the benefits. And some of the costs of moving towards, more frequent deployments may be a bit invisible or unexpected, where you have a lower quality or a sequence of more or less meaningless little changes that they say, oh, we have a new mini release from 1.2.1. We went from 2.1, 2 and 3 and 4. When are we going to see version 2.0 of the system? Really a major upgrade, rather than being in this logic where we go round and round and round and improve bit by bit. It's a bit the same discussion as continuous improvement. I think continuous integration development leads to sort of continuous improvement, and the advantage of sort of quarterly deployment is that you really think ahead, where we want to be with the system 6 months from now, a year from now. Focus on bigger chunks that are truly big changes to what you are running and managing and building. I know a future employer will probably not like to hear that, but that's again speaking from reality and my experience in this field. So we went there. Oh, I think I'm maybe through my presentation. Oh, the second one here. Yeah, for DevOps. I wanted to go back to why it's a lot more. Sort of as a philosophy, over an approach. Well, what do I mean when I talk about that? I think of it as a set of practices, and practices are more difficult than this is methodology. And practice what you preach. It's often said. So yeah, really adopting DevOps is about changing the way you work, practices. And then yes, introducing new tools, but I said it can get quite complicated. You already have a lot of tools. Again, speaking from experience, I saw an organization really grapple with Jira, and then Confluence, the Atlassian tools. Jira as a new integrated project portfolio management tool or platform combined with a collaborative environment in which teams could work. Well, people and teams, they did still use their Google Drives or their SharePoints or their little WhatsApp groups to move ahead, and that's not bad. You cannot force people to adopt, an entirely new tool just because you think it's a bit better. And often from a management point of view, you want to have one repository of information. Well, yeah, of course that's nice, but let teams also have their own repositories. I would say Confluence is sort of a Wikipedia. I had to clean up from a predecessor the number of procedures that were there. It was all great reading, and but there were too many. They weren't being followed, and I could see from the number of reads that nobody really cared. So then you need to refocus on the basics and um, go back to basics a little bit and say like, okay, what is really necessary, and then organize time and space around it to make sure that at least the basics are of your standards, quality or whatever, are being respected by the organization. We all know that COVID, working at home, might have made that a bit more difficult. I think working at home or hybrid working is great, but it does lead a bit to difficulties for people who want to say like, that's how we're going to work, or that's what we need to change. I still like to be in a room with a team, live rather than on Zooms or Zoom or on Teams. But again, so the tools, I talked about it too much. If you're sort of serious about it, and I said DevOps, again thinking of my last experience, is it's not an external consultant or a contractor that's gonna teach or implement DevOps. It's your own management, your own permanent employees that need to believe in the concept and drive it. Otherwise, you will be managed by your consultants rather than you managing your consultants. But if it's used properly, I think it's a great way to improve both, these permanent functions and processes, your ITIL or IT service management model, as well indeed as having a project portfolio and a practical project management approach that is going to work better and lead to fast delivery or delivery on time, on budget, very important, cost control, and most important of all, I think, on quality. What did we promise to build, and what did we end up building in the end? I think it's also going to lead to better integration of these horizontal teams, as I call them. Security is often DevSecOps perspective now. Quality, very, very important. Keep it up and make it better. So your systems can indeed sort of, in the longer run, be certified or be seen as very reliable. I think DevOps will indeed lead to the better testing because you get feedback from operations and documentation. Then it will also be easier. Concern of operations often help desk is in the operations department, or setting up the help desk functions for it. That's the other thing about continuous integration development. When you work towards a big change, you will invest more in when something goes wrong, or just educating your user. First line support, or training and development around an upgrade. The second line, third line support, and operational support for the system. That's also where I think quarterly releases might in some contexts work better than continuous integration or development, just in practical terms of educating your users about how the system works and evolves. I think DevOps will lead to better architectural thinking. And that in turn will lead to better technology and management and all finance decisions. For instance, about a bit. Maybe perhaps changing your virtualization architecture. If you go from VMware, you're going to implement containers. Well, make sure that the old thing gets phased out, so things are not getting more and more complex. So platform decisions, in and outsourcing decisions. I think. What do we have in house? What can we chew, and what should we? Where do we need outside help? Better knowledge management. I said the training and learning around it. An important thing I mentioned here is that DevOps should ideally lead to a joint, what I call a total cost of ownership view. Total cost of ownership is, the investment that's going to be your development team's effort, licenses, and whatever, and then the recurrent costs. So DevOps will automatically lead that you will have a discussion in a room that has that long-term perspective, and tries to arrive at this total cost of ownership view. How much is this thing going to cost us over a period of 5 or 10 years, rather than what does it cost in terms of investment? So to keep your ICT budgets under control, I think DevOps can definitely help as a management paradigm. I talked about it also. I think it does usefully combine, or what should happen, and integrate this idea of a bit of a waterfall approach, systems that are well aligned because they fit into clearly laid out data model, process model of the organization, versus agile approaches. So we need to quickly build something, and we don't care too much whether it fits in with the rest of our architecture or not. That's not agile, I know that, but I said it's a bit of an artificial separation anyway. When we were doing waterfall with the information engineering methodology 30 years ago, honestly, we did a rapid prototyping. We also had the concept of let's bring out a minimum viable product with these case tools, indeed, so we can get feedback, we can see how it really works in an operational environment, the system. So waterfall has never been this thing as this linear process. There were feedback loops, and I think DevOps is bringing that a little bit back, where we don't think of waterfall versus agile, or business process re-engineering versus business process engineering. No, we bring continuous improvement together with real changes. As part probably indeed of continuous integration and improvement and development process, but I said that probably should not be equated with, we have to release something every week, because that's better. Why is it better? Save up the changes, and you're maybe every month to release, you will have less overhead and less work for your change and release manager, and also for configuration management and these things. I think DevOps does improve also management frameworks. When you think of a balanced scorecard approach, smart indicators to monitor the progress on your projects, but also sort of indeed the joint monitoring of how systems work. By your development teams who are more implicated in the phase that supposedly follows the development, which is the operational stage. When you have this feedback loop, development teams can work hand in hand with operations to monitor also how thing uses CPU time, what the complications are in terms of your virtual machine architecture. Again, in one environment, we had a virtualization degree of 1 to 50 or 1 to 60. Every little application was built in its own silo, had its own web server, application server. It was unmanageable. So a DevOps approach will help to keep things like that under control. This silo approach was favored by development teams because they said, it's kind of easy. The one application will not impact the others, but for the operations team, when you keep building each and every application with its own web application server, then you're gonna have like 4 or 5 thousand virtual machines on maybe 200 physical servers, and I can assure you it comes with problems at a certain point of time. Um, Very practically speaking, we had to upgrade Red Hat Linux from 7 to 8. 8 is not even the most, and that has been dragging on for 2 years. Why? Because if you have 5,000 to 6,000 virtual machines, and you have type 2 hypervisors, then it means that you need to examine each and every little stack, I would say, and then replace that kernel in it, and that required looking up. Who is the owner of this or that little system, and often these owners could not be found. That's the other thing which I put here actually. I didn't put it here. Finding the owners, better ownership of applications. Or did I put it here? No, I didn't. Would be a very important aspect for me is indeed that the DevOps approach is gonna make sure that the ownership, both the business ownership and the application ownership, is going to be much better defined, and that operations people are not going to kick the ball back to a development team that may no longer exist, and it's often a complaint the operations departments for especially for legacy systems, they become I would say the development or management teams for these legacy systems, and the software factory or development teams, they don't care about it. So a DevOps philosophy is gonna avoid these kind of issues, and that's why I'm a strong believer in it. Better integration between in-house ICT staff and external consultants, for the same reason as why bringing development teams and operations together are also going to allow for easier communication with business departments who don't no longer have to talk to he works for operations and I don't care about the development team or team leader, PMO office that might sit with the CEO itself, communication between the CEO and CIO, the CIO and his own departments, breaking up the walls between often operations and development department, plus maybe an architecture office and a CISO office, and Chief Information Security Officer. So that's a lot of advantages. And as said, probably I have not summed them all of them, but it's not an easy thing to really make it work. And what I did, and that's the last thing I'm gonna say with the organization, is often these implementing a DevOps philosophy is phrased in terms of, we're gonna do a project or a strategic project or a PMO, a new project. Then it's just a project among other projects. My approach was really to sort of say, think of sort of this as being a continuous improvement work stream. A work stream, in Dutch we call it een verbetertraject. Something that does not require extra resources, maybe some extra expertise, but I don't think so. But basically, one of your performance manager or portfolio management who takes on an extra role as a process manager to better manage DevOps processes. So that doesn't cost any more money. It doesn't complicate whatever framework you use for a project portfolio management, maybe the SAFe framework, Scaled Agile framework, or whatever. No, it's not a separate project. Implementing a new management philosophy or approach is not. You do it in a way project-wise, but it's not a project like other projects. And I would say I think about that. It needs to be led by managers, which is not an easy thing because they need to be aware of problems that maybe they don't want to be aware of. A CIO might want to hide low productivity in or the development team might want to hide that. A lot of issues need to come to the open and need to be discussed clearly, and that's not always easy. So you need to develop that consensus, and then sort of I would say also don't create new fora to manage this work stream. Work through existing coordination meetings that you have, interdepartmental meetings between your developers, development, so the software factory as we called it in my previous organization, and the operations team, together with participation of architects. No multiplier roles, but involve everyone, and do it through your regular meetings. And then management needs to make sure they have enough attention for it, and that this process manager or whatever you want to call him, who sort of leads this work stream, can indeed escalate issues up to the management level, because there will be some political risk, or because in the end, you also, when you go for DevOps, one of the things I say is, and I saw that, okay, development teams have budget and they need to spend it, and operations have budget, and both, these directors will want to increase their budget, and if possible, chip away from budget from their co-director. And I'm not kidding. I saw that happening. DevOps needs to break through these kind of discussions, and that's where I'm gonna go to my last slide, which repeats a lot of what I've been saying. Is this project-driven approach in ICT management, which you see growing. And now everything has to be a project. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I can live with that, but I also see that the way we do portfolio management often is, you need to think about the money. And so, yeah, I think project managers, they're supposed to be budget holders also. And in very few organizations, that's the case, where okay, they're not the boss of the budget. They don't decide on, but they need to sort of say, okay, I need so many people, preferably, people from within the house, and I need so much percentage of their time, or I need extra consultants. I think, project budgets need to really be worked out a lot better. They need to clearly distinguish between investment cost and long-term recurrent costs. So you have a total cost of ownership view, at the level of the project, at the level of your program, and at the level of your, well, you can organize it around the technology. Projects, I often see that we really need to do a lot more. Investment goes up, yeah, but then the investment goes down, and we get in a stage where you have recurrent costs, okay, because the investment cost goes down, recurrent costs like licenses still go up, but the investment cost goes down, so it levels out. In the longer run, the total cost, or the yearly cost, the operations and maintenance cost, you're implementing a new technology to, drive operations and maintenance costs down, and that often, that doesn't happen. And this is where I say, okay, let me phrase it more positively. What is my approach? You need to think big, right? Okay, you need to think where we get this, and then you need to start small. You start with a pilot, see if it works. Get feedback, and software develop maybe a minimum viable product, or a proof of concept, whatever you want to call it, and then you need to scale fast. Okay, and that's but that's not the end of the story. You scale fast, and then the budget. This is, of course, what ICT managers want. They want to see it go like that, which often happened. Again, in one organization, it was amazing, from 35 million to 85 to 100 plus million over 5 years, and the CIO was very proud about that he has managed to secure that budget, which he should be. I don't think it's obvious that with a board of directors they would accept something that in the private sector, but in the public sector it worked, and so he was a very good CIO, I would say. But that's not a CEO view you should have on ICT management. Costs have to come down, and that's where you need to look at your portfolio of projects, because projects cost money. And so I talked about the Pareto rule already. You need to really focus on the project. This is the Gartner approach. These projects that bring business value, either because they hugely increase revenues, they allow you to tap new markets, or else because they lead to cost reductions. You want to move to a new virtualization, or you want to move to cloud, or a new SLDLC approach, low or no code platform, or you want to do data warehousing because then you want to reduce costs. And if that doesn't happen, then don't. And this is also something which people are probably not long. My operational definition of legacy versus new technology and new developments is what we are doing today. Our new development and our new technologies, that's our legacy of tomorrow. And if sort of there's no real idea of how this new development is going to contribute to doing lowering the cost of your legacy systems or replacing them altogether, then your ICT budgets are going to explode and keep exploding. So my portfolio classification, and again, I will admit, my manager was not too happy about that when I said, okay, this is my portfolio classification instead of, approaching a very technical. I applied a financial definition. Said, okay, we have legacy, right? And we will have investment costs that are related to the legacy. Okay, and we need to evaluate if it's worthwhile or not worthwhile. So, for instance, we will want to invest in a new virtualization engine. We move away from containers to, and we move away from VMware. Or other middleware investments, Kafka, Nifi, what is it? TLS, transport layer security, you need to have that. But tell me, how is that going to reduce? And there you need to be tough, I think, as an ICT manager. How is that going to help us to phase out and stop paying for things that actually these things are supposed to replace? And the replacement, well, we're still going to have that around, and it's not very clear when it's going to be phased out. There were so many projects. There were over 100 projects in the whole portfolio. I think about a third of them were about phasing out an old technology, and nobody had worked on them in the last 2 years. They hadn't moved at all. So then I think as an ICT manager, you should be tough and say like, no new projects, no new virtualization technology, no new middleware until you can seriously show me that you're going to make equal process or even more on phasing out old stuff. Because otherwise you're caught and you don't get that declining or at least not too much of an increase in your ICT budget. Recurrent cost, you're going to have that with legacy. I do not have an issue with that because new technologies, I said the licensing model, typically if you go for a new technology, your license, it's not going to be open source often. So you risk a vendor lock-in, and then, with older technology, well, you will have open source, which can be safe through, a GNU general public license. Red Hat Linux is a GNU GPL license. Pretty expensive, but you have an open source project that gets remarketed, and there's a lot of stuff on the market for so-called legacy that is going to cost you a lot less than your new next fancy vehicle. And technology upgrades can do a lot. Mainframes are still around on the Z operating system from IBM. For certain types of applications, we need high redundancy, high security, dedicated lines. You want to do hot plugs in of hardware. That old mainframe architecture wasn't too bad. And so with add-ons, you can do a lot. But so you have your legacy. You're gonna have that, and I said manage it rationally. So for the new investment cost examples that I give here is. Okay, we're going to move to cloud. Again, there you need to be tough and say, like, okay, we move to cloud. That means that we really need to also see progress in, we need to stop the expansion of our data center, and we need to stop buying new servers. Why would we need new servers if we have a project that moves applications to cloud? And that was the contradiction. Then, you don't want to see someone come and say, oh, well, we need 10, 15 extra physical servers, preferably with a chipsets that have 12 or 24 or 36 cores. A new ERP, CRM, okay, fine, but phase out the old one and do it aggressively. And I can give more and more examples. But so I think when you have a financial perspective on your portfolio, It's going to make it also easier to apply that Pareto rule. As I said, 20% of your project, and we're talking 80% of the cost or 80% of the benefit. Focus on these, and the others, the 80% of stuff um, that doesn't make a lot of change in terms of the bottom line, but that does eat up time, management costs, attention, and whatever. Get an aggressive guy on that and weed it out. Is there a golden success formula? You will say what is mine. My favorite management slogan is a commercial slogan. It's the same Avis. We try harder. It's been the longest marketing and management slogan around. It was a management philosophy. You know, car rental. There's nothing easier than that, right? We have a fleet of cars and we rent them out. So calculate the operational cost and then try to cut down, on these costs and try to get. How are you going to get the margin from the customer? Buy a lady that smiles when you come straight up from the plane after a long intercontinental flight. Said, "Well, here's your car, sir. Where are you going today?" Just a little chat, and that made Avis, in a commodity industry, grow from a local U.S. state provider of car rental services to world leader. They abandoned that slogan, I think, 5 or 10 years ago, and it hasn't been good apparently for the financial results and market share. I would say another recipe for success is just this simple thing. Don't be aggressive in terms of objectives, but make sure that the people, maybe not explicitly, aim high, because the arrow, gravity, friction in your company, setbacks, political infighting, personality politics, whatever, is going to make sure that your arrow comes down a little bit. So make sure that your people are ambitious, that they are motivated, both at the management level as well as the team, the people that need to make it happen. If you can bring that motivation into aim a little bit higher, then you're going to get where you want. Shadow IT, I'm not going to talk about that. I hate it when ICT departments say, "Oh well," to the user, "You can't do this, you can't buy that." Or say like, "Yeah, but you haven't delivered much in terms of what I want or this and that." So you're going to have shadow IT outside of your in being used in business. Have a constructive discussion about it. Why are they doing what they're doing? And then shadow IT within your own organization. I remember one thing where suddenly for after the in January there had been a cyber attack in Belgium on a large city, and priorities changed, and then it was we're using Angular as a web server framework, and now we need to have Angular JS, Angular JavaScript. That's the new one. And said like, okay, because it's a security risk, Angular. Said, why is it a security risk? I mean, it's no longer supported. There's a newer version around it, but the security patches and this and that, and the fact is it's on GitHub and you download it, you're gonna get to check some stuff and whatever. Yeah, but shadow IT. Okay, so you want to replace it because it's shadow IT. Be clear about what the definitions are, what's allowed, what's not allowed. Don't waste too much time on, shadow IT. Yeah, we need to get rid of it, especially with cybersecurity threats. But be nuanced about it. Look for the root causes of why shadow IT is there. Is it because the development team really wants to get the job done and doesn't want to bother with a lengthy procurement process? Is it really a threat to the security of your systems? Maybe not. If not, then have a healthy discussion about it and see what you can do. But yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that because I've been talking too long and there's nothing left here. Okay, no. All right, that's all, folks, as they say in Looney. What's called these cartoons? That's too long ago, Walt Disney. And I talked for an hour, so.